Hawaii response, Mr. President?
And on Hawaii, how does the White House respond to critics who have suggested that the president should not have been vacationing at the beach over the weekend as the Maui crisis became the worst wildfire in a century?
So a couple of things, and I've said this multiple times. The president is certainly deeply concerned about the people in Maui, to the point where he has mobilized a whole of government approach here, as he has done many times to deal with these wildfires in Hawaii from the beginning. You've heard directly from the administrator. From day one, FEMA has been on the ground dealing with this. There's more than 300 personnel, FEMA personnel. We've talked about the 50,000 meals. We've talked about the 75,000 liters of water, the thousands of cots that are out there and blankets. And there is more than a dozen federal agencies who are dealing with this issue right now that we're currently seeing in Maui, and it is a devastating sight. And the president and the first lady has been very clear about offering certainly their condolences and making sure that we continue this whole of government approach. That is not going to stop. The president has also committed to being there for the government of Hawaii, the people of Maui, for as long as it takes. And sadly, we have seen this before. And so, look, you heard yesterday he received 2 updates from the FEMA administrator. Criswell was on, as she's on the ground, as you just heard. As the Governor Green stressed yesterday as well, within 6 hours of receiving Hawaii's request, President Biden signed a major disaster declaration and ordered all available federal resources in the state to help with the response. And Governor Green described this as having provided amazing support for recovery, because the president was able to do that within those 6 hours. Senator Horino, who I said the president spoke to just last night, he thanked the president for the immediate support of federal agencies have delivered for residents of Hawaii, and so has Senator Schatz. And so. Look, you heard that from the president. I'm going to quote him from what he said on Thursday, which is he's directed what we surge support of these brave firefighters and first responders and emergency personnel working around the clock. I'm going to make sure the state has everything it needs from the federal government to recover, because the president is deeply concerned and is going to continue to be there for the people of Maui, the government of Hawaii, for as long as it takes, and that is his commitment.
So should the American people be seeing the president on the phone, working the phones, talking to officials, rather than seeing him on the beach?
You all have gotten full reports on who the president has connected with. You all have heard from us when the president has talked to the governor, you heard from me about talking to the senator, you heard directly from the administrator. And you've heard from the governor and the senators on the ground saying how much they appreciated the work of the federal government, the work from this president. And I think that matters. I think that matters that the folks who are on the ground, the elected officials, are saying that they're receiving the help that they need to deal with this devastating issue. And that's what you're going to continue to hear from this administration, and that's what you're going to continue to see. Again, the administrator was there for 2 whole days. 2 whole days on the ground by the president's request to make sure that the government has what they have, the local government has what they have, the people of Maui have what they have, and that's what you're going to see. When you talk about a dozen agencies on the ground helping and assisting, more than hundreds of FEMA personnel, that's what matters. That's what matters to make sure that they're actually seeing on the ground the people who know how to work this, who know how to deal with these type of devastating events, who can be helpful to them on the ground doing just that by the request of this president.
Given what the administrator said about the perils of the president traveling to Hawaii now, does he want to travel there eventually to survey the damage and meet survivors?
So obviously I don't have anything to announce at this time. Look, we're going to continue to have conversations with the administrator, certainly the governor in Hawaii, on what the opportunities might be, what that may look like for a trip, but right now we just don't have anything to share.
And any plans for him to speak publicly about the death toll?
You'll hear from the president. You've heard from him already on Thursday. Certainly you'll hear from him, continuously this week, as he's going to be traveling tomorrow. I just don't have anything to share on that. But look, this is something that the president clearly is deeply concerned about. That is why you heard we had the administrator zoom in, right? clearly from where she is in Hawaii to talk directly to all of you, to take your questions. You heard from her. There's more than 300 personnel, FEMA personnel on the ground. There are more than a dozen federal agencies who are taking actions, and that is including the Coast Guard, the U.S. Navy. You heard me say that at the top, the Department of Defense. And FEMA has staged more than 50,000 meals, 75,000 liters of water, and thousands of cots and blankets. And we're going to continue to be available to them. We're going to continue to do a whole of government response in Hawaii and Maui specifically to make sure that they have everything that they need. Look, you're going to continue certainly to hear from us on this issue.
Has the president given any advice that he should not speak about Hawaii at this point? Because when he spoke the other day, he added that to planned remarks. The death toll is now roughly tripled. It's now the worst in history. He had an opportunity, he could have stopped by to see us when he arrived back. Do you expect that he will have any kind of standalone comments about the new level of loss and devastation?
So you could expect to hear from the president on this issue. Clearly, it is something that is deeply concerning to him when it comes to the wildfires that we have seen in Maui. That's why we again had the administrator here. That's why she was on TV the last couple of days, being on the ground. She can speak directly to this, right? Being on the ground.
I'm asking about the president's voice.
No, I just said you'll hear from the president on this. I don't have anything to announce at this time, but certainly he's the president, right? You're going to hear from him. You heard from him on Thursday. And then you've heard from the administrator for the past several days, and so what the president wants to make sure is that Maui has the government of Hawaii has everything that they need to support the people on the ground. It's been a devastation as we have seen. You've just mentioned the loss of life. You just heard from the administrator who has said that she has been on the ground for 2 whole days, and we have been there since day one. You heard that there's 300 personnel on the ground, so this is something that the president takes very seriously. And you've heard from the governor of Hawaii saying how he appreciates the efforts and what we've been able to do from the federal government. Of course, you're going to hear from the president. Don't have anything to share at this time, but let's not forget, we did hear from him on Thursday, right, when he was in Utah ahead of talking about the PACT Act, which is, as you know, it was a year anniversary, an issue that is incredibly important to many Americans, and he took that time to speak to it. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from the president. Go ahead.